the one thing that we as individuals can do to affect that is to really start to and embody that within ourselves, valuing our own wisdom over our own production.
Welcome to another episode in our monthly series called PM Talks with my friend Patrick Rhone, and of course, yours truly. What we do is every month, Patrick and I just sit down and have a productive conversation about a variety of things. We center it around one particularly important area that might be related to managing your relationship with time, which we get into today, of course, and cultivating, a productive mindset and productiveness in general. This time around, we are talking about pacing and cadence. In other words, the idea of slowing down and speeding up and what is the speed of right. We get into all that stuff. We talk about me just turning 50 as of this recording and how that looks to me now, the role of age in pacing and how much of a role it plays, a whole bunch of stuff. I really enjoyed this conversation. And it's going to dovetail nicely into the conversation we have next month, as well as draw from previous podcast episodes that we've had in previous conversations. So let's get into it. Here is Patrick and yours truly having another fine PM Talks, this time about pacing and cadence. Enjoy. I'm older, Patrick. As of this recording, I'm older.
Yeah, I know.
I've been told.
How does it feel
to
be on the other side?
On the other side, it doesn't feel any different in terms of like most birthdays once you get to kind of, but the number is what's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about the number 50 is that there is this societal kind of tie to the age of 50 that it's like you are now, you're on the other side. Like my buddy Steve Dotto said, congratulations, you're a member of the gray wave now. Like, and I'm like, well, I have a little bit of gray, but nothing, it's not a wave. It's more of a
nothing like Patrick.
No, nothing like Patrick. Yeah. Or Steve Martin. Actually, it was funny. My son and I were watching the Three Amigos the other day. And, of course, I'm going to have to put a pin in it for a second.
That's fine. You're dealing with so much house stuff right now. I know that I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised that.
That we're doing this. Yeah. But that's a whole other conversation around certainty and uncertainty, which we will get to next time because hopefully there's more certainty.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about like the idea of, again, when it comes to age, you start to think about, for first off, most people go, oh, you're midlife now. I'm like, no, midlife in theory, based on average lifespans is like 38, right? You know what I mean? Like 76 is kind of, so I'm already well into that. I'm 2/3 in, let's say at, thereabouts. But, one thing that I have noticed is, other than the societal kind of like, oh, you're 50 and it changes some of the conversation to a degree. It's only subtle so far, but I'm sure I'm gonna notice it more and more. But also, they say like 40 is the new 30 and 30 is the new 20 in the era that we're in right now. I do think that 50 is kind of like the new 40, but what does that even mean? And secondly, one thing that I have noticed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is when it comes to pacing and cadence, I need to be more aware of how I pace things and the cadence that I have, because I'm not I got sick just shortly after my birthday. Not sure if it was a short bout with COVID-19 or not. It did feel like a weird kind of illness, but who knows? And I usually, when I am done, like I take good care of myself when I'm sick, I get all the rest I need. But then when I'm feeling on the other side of it, I'm like, okay, time to get going and time to get back into it. And I've noticed more as the years have gone on, specifically probably in the last 5 or so, that I'm not going to say my get up and go got up and went, but it's not, but it's not you can't just jump back into things in the same way. I can't go underneath my deck with as much ease to pull like a tree that might be growing underneath there in sapling form than I could even 5 years ago, right? And it's not like
Right.
I'm not. So the reason I want to talk about pacing and cadence is it doesn't matter what age you are. It's a factor. And I wonder if the world that we live in that requires so much reactivity and so much like speed, uh, is there's a point where you speed, for lack of a better term, kills. Like it's not gonna. I mean, you won't be able to necessarily get that speed that is seemingly demanded of you, and being okay with that, and not just being okay with that, but finding out the pacing that works and the cadence that can work for you, that you can sustain. I'm not saying that you don't have to ramp it up every once in a while, but it changes, right?
Yeah. Let me also throw this in because I'm not sure if you have reached this point yet. I'm only 6 years ahead of you, 7 actually. I'll be turning 57 in October, but I'm 56 now. Um, and that is time. Our perception of time actually it seems like time speeds up as we get older.
It does. Time dilation.
Right.
Yes.
And right. And that there's multiple studies to show this. And there's even some recent ones that have further confirmed like the reasons behind it and that sort of thing. Right. And so, so because of that, as we get older, the time seems to be moving by quicker.
Right.
It seems like, when we were kids, a year was a very long time. When we were, in our 20s and 30s, a year was still kind of a long time. But now we get to the end of a year and like, where did it go? Like, it seems like, I didn't like have a chance to do anything I wanted because it just like went by so fast, right?
We're recording this literally, over halfway into 2024, and it barely feels like 2024 got underway.
I know, right? And so that also has an effect on our pacing and our cadence and that sort of thing, because the temptation, of course, is, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. Let me pack more in. Let me try to do more, that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We have the temptation to speed up along with time or our perception therein. When in fact, the truth of the matter is that time itself hasn't changed, right? We still get the same 24 hours every day. We still get, the same 365 days a year, give or take one. And we still, have the chance to manage our time and to control our time that we always have, right?
Sure.
And that we should fight that perception to a certain extent when it comes to our day-to-day lives and the things we'd like to get done and that sort of thing. The cadence thing becomes even more important to pay attention to not let our perception of time control us, but to always realize that it is the other way around.
Is it though? Here's my question. So this is where we can get to the philosophical discussions about time. So to me, we live within time and time lives within us. There's no control element, because if we could control it or even manage it, I think it's about managing the relationship with time. And I know that there's semantics and all that stuff there, but this is as you were talking about this, and I've been thinking about this too. And this is something, and again, I'm probably more attuned to this just because of the nature of the work that I do and the time I've spent on it, is I feel now at 50, it's not I'm in a hurry to get all the things done. It's more I want to make sure I get the right things done. So I'm more focused less
Right.
on quantity and more on quality. Like the balance is shifting a bit because I know that I am, quote, running out of time. Although again, I could run out of time
Mm.
tomorrow. I could run out of time 40 years from now. We don't know. We don't know. And
Spoiler, yes, we're all running out of time.
that's just it. That's just it. And so, but to your point, I think the initial reaction is, oh crap, I'm running out of time. I better try to do as much as I can, as opposed to I'm running out of time. What really matters to me? And how can I make sure that, are there ways I can make sure that I can do them justice along the way? Right. Which involves, frankly, an understanding of like how you're going to pace yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, but I think we're actually just talking about the same thing, and
We
maybe
are.
I didn't state it as plainly and as well as you did, as far as time, our relationship to it, how we, it's not that we control time, it's that time hasn't changed at all,
No.
and that what we can control is, like you said, our relationship to it and how we decide to use it and the things we decide to use it on. That said, the cadence thing, I agree, is really important. One of the things that keeps popping up for me, especially now that circus rigging season has begun for me. Side note for those just now listening in, I do volunteer rigging at a youth circus here in my town of St. Paul, Minnesota. My daughter is involved. I've been rigging now for, I don't know, I think a decade. But one of the things I have come to learn that has taught me a lot about cadence is what I've come to term, and maybe other people call it this too. I don't know. It seems like I heard this somewhere, and I don't know where, so I can't attribute it. So it's not original, but it's move slow to go fast.
What is it? It's slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Fast.
That's like,
yes,
I think it's like
right.
from the Marines or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yes. This is certainly true in circus. My inclination is to run out and get a mat under the center, performer ASAP as soon as they go up, and to run it out there. But in fact, if I do that, I not only risk tripping and falling over the mat and injuring myself and whatever, which has happened before, and this is how I learned the lesson, or to patiently but with determination get the mat in place, check to make sure that it is placed in exactly the right spot it needs to be at center, and to walk with speed off, not to run, walk.
Right.
Because not doing those things risks not only injuring myself, it risks putting the performer's safety in peril. That sort of thing. I learned it just this past week where that exact scenario. We have a performer in the center on a winch up in the air. They go up. I have to move a mat underneath them, and then I have to exit. All the while, there are unicyclists going around the center. So I actually have to go through the unicyclist, place this mat, and then exit through the unicyclists as they're performing, as they're doing their thing. Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I have to wait for the exact right opening to get that mat in, and wait, not to run off, wait until the exact right opening to exit the stage safely. Or, a unicyclist is going to run into me. They're going to tumble and fall. Probably everyone behind them will too. At least 2 or 3 of them will. and I certainly will
Well,
be landed on my back, right?
and
So
there's a mutually agreed upon time when that happens, and if any of that is thrown off,
yeah,
then that could, I mean, you might get lucky.
yeah,
That's the whole idea of good, good process, bad process, right? Like the idea
yeah,
of,
yeah.
you know what I was thinking about as, and I know people can't see this, but as you were telling me this, I was trying to figure out when you said the following quote. And it would have been at least over a decade ago because I remember quoting it in my Creative Live class where you said
Mm.
saying no is saying yes to other
You're
things.
saying yes to other things. Yeah.
Do you remember when you first said that? And it's, I mean, first off, there are variations of that anyway out there. Like, let's be clear.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the two things that, again, it's funny, wisdom shows up too. As we get older, we get the wisdom. So there's that, and then there's the sensible defaults. Those two things, like those two things,
You're right.
in and of themselves, are adages that live within time, but also are timeless. Like those rules applied eons ago. Like it's not like those are new. I'm not saying that the need to keep those things in mind will never go away, right? Like humankind will always be faced with this everlasting idea that, we have to say no to things. Because if we do, then we can give greater effort and attention to other things. And sensible defaults are like, hey, don't just do what they give you, like figure out what your own defaults are and make, go with that, right? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because what do you have the date where you figure
it comes from an essay in my book Enough, which of course
2011?
Do I have a copy within arm's reach? No, but yes, I'd say 2011.
Yeah. So
that sounds right.
And what's funny is the one thing I will say that when it comes to pacing and cadence for both of those adages that we just talked about is it does require a slowing down. It does require space. It needs that because you cannot, I don't believe that you can employ reason as reason should be employed without giving it the room that it needs to do the work that it's meant to do, which is, okay, I'm going to say, I love this idea of saying no, saying yes to other things. What am I going to say no to? How am I going to do that? And further to that, how do I make that my quote sensible default? How do I make sure?
Yeah.
And that involves as tricky as it is. And when we read the idea of slow productivity that Cal Newport put out as a book and things like that, these are not necessarily, I mean, I'm glad Cal brought it to the fore, but it's not new. Like, it's not like guys like us have been talking about that for a long time, especially you, the idea of enough and all that. It's like, and I think that what happens, well, I mean, and again, I can only speak from my side of things. And I do have that, I live in this realm is as you get older, you're like, you understand because you can't keep up. You can't go at the speed that you used to, like just physically. The mind might want to, but the body may not be able to, or the body may be able to, but the mind is having a problem catching up. Like there's a lack of alignment that can happen there. You have to choose, and you have to choose, okay, am I willing to go fast and be, have shoddy output and be overwhelmed and all that? Or am I going to leverage my experience, my understanding of the way the world has worked over the last 50 years or so, or 30 years or whatever it is, and go, okay, I am going to devote more attention and focus to the things that will help me truly be productive, despite the fact that through the passage of time, I am slowing down and getting older and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, and I think that takes a lot of inward reflection on where you're at and what you're truly capable of, and I guess how to take what you're able to do and know the things that you're not, so you can reasonably make those yes no choices, right? Those things you say yes to and those things that you say no to, um are aligned with your ability to do them, right? um you know I think, as for those of us who are of this age, right? And I'm certainly not speaking about any presidential candidates here, but one of the hardest things to recognize is that thing that I could do just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is. Maybe I'm not really able to do it today. Maybe my body is just not there anymore. Or maybe it could be, but it would take me twice as long to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Thanks to the algorithm, it reminded me that it wasn't that long ago that I was 45 when I did the Go Rec Challenge. And just
yep.
Google it, look it up. You'll see.
We'll put in the show notes. I'll even see if I can
put it in the show notes.
Yep.
And bottom line is that it's a pretty difficult 24-hour physical endurance event.
I forgot you did that. I remember you posting it.
Yeah. The truth of the matter is that as much as I would love to think, oh yeah, I could do that today. I'm as strong as I was then. I probably could.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't just run out there and do it tomorrow. And I trained up for that Go Rec Challenge in probably about 3 to 6 months. It would easily take me a year now.
Right.
11 years later.
There's a show really quickly on Disney Plus that just came out that's starring Joseph Fiennes and his cousin Randolph Fiennes, who the Guinness Book of World Records is calling the world's greatest living explorer. He's now 80, and the Disney Plus show, I'll link to it in the show notes, is Joseph going along with his cousin as they go to repeat, in a manner of speaking, the exploration, or the expedition rather, that his cousin Rand did in, I think it was 1971, where he basically went down the entire length of British Columbia in the rivers. And I mean, British Columbia, up until you get down to the lower mainland, is the wild. It's and it's interesting because as there's only 2 episodes that I've seen so far. There might be more by the time this comes out, or maybe it's just a 2-episode mini series. But parts you can tell, because Rand is 80, there's things that they did do, but then there's things that they're like, we're gonna take the car. You know what I mean? But what's interesting when you watch it is you've got this younger guy who's probably closer to my age now. He's closer to our age. I think Joseph Fiennes has got to be probably close to 50, if not 50. And then his older cousin, who's 30, at least almost 30 years his senior, still, sharp enough to know here's what we do in these situations, so on and so forth, but understanding, and what we're talking about here is limitations, that I can do this, but I can't do this. But having me along for the ride will allow you to experience this in a way that you may not be able to if you were, well, number one, Joseph Fiennes is a trained actor. He's not going to be able to do that on his own anyway.
Right.
And secondly,
right.
but just to get, and what's interesting, this harkens back to our perspective episode, what it was like when the cousin did it, Rand did it in 1971 versus 50 plus years later doing it now. What's changed? I mean, maybe they couldn't drive to the park before, but now they can, right? So it is, but and to your point about and I mean, this is a very connected point, is the age factor of people who are overstaying their welcome in certain arenas. what I find fascinating about that is that culture used to, historically, when you got to a certain age, you became the elder or emeritus
Yeah.
or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you were a sage at that point. Like
Yeah.
they would go to you for advice,
A
right?
friggin' wizard. Yes.
Exactly. And now and what there was value in that. Like that was
Yes.
considered to be like a valued position. And that
Yeah.
seemingly has gone away.
Yeah, which is well, it has seemingly gone away in Western culture.
Fair in Western culture, yes.
In Western culture, it's still
Modern
very much the
modern
case.
Western culture, like indigenous people, they revere their elders, and I mean, there's lots of that.
Uh,
But
yeah,
why?
well, I mean, all over Africa, all over
Yeah,
Asia. I mean, this is that is the norm, and it was the norm for most of the world up until, say, the last well,
probably.
since the dawn of really American culture, to be
Well, I would
honest
say
with you.
probably more like when capitalism really started to take, like the idea of
Sure.
But what's interesting to me,
Well, the idea of work making you useful
yeah.
versus wisdom making you useful.
The contribution value became more, again, quantitative over qualitative, right?
Qualitative,
Right?
right? Exactly.
And so to me, and I'll use the example of what's going on in the news right now, like Joe Biden should say, I'm the elder statesman of the party. I'm going to step aside and let someone younger that can handle this run the race. To be fair, the other guy should too. Like the other guy's too old also.
Yes.
And when you've
3
got
years younger.
Yeah, and when you've got a guy who it's interesting because it's not just in that position. There's tons of them. I mean, and it's on both sides of the table, right? One will one party lets had a person basically die, while they were seated in office because they didn't want to lose the seat and they weren't ready to have somebody run, so they helped her get up the stairs, and it looked like she didn't know where she was half the time. And then on the other side, you've got a guy who's leading things who, like, are you okay, dude? And like, I mean, so there's, and the problem is, and this is where it gets weird, I think, or tricky, is that ageism is also a real thing. But the problem,
yes, very much so.
But the thing about ageism is that I think there's rules that can circumvent that. So like, if you were, like, at 70, I wouldn't want to be running a country. I wouldn't even want to probably be running a business. I'd want to be like, you want to come to me for advice? I'm there for that, right? But it's an ego. The ego is playing a role in it. There's power dynamics. But to me, it's like that. And if you were to say, if you were to put a limit, let's say, Patrick, they said you cannot run for the highest office in the land if you were over 70 years old, there would be lawsuits like crazy happening at this point.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, because so many of the people that would like a crack at that, who haven't had the chance for any number of reasons, are approaching that age.
Yeah.
And they're the people that would be passing such law. But I guess here's what I would say without getting too deeply into
but this is about the pacing and the cadence and all that stuff, right? Like there's certain elements that age,
yes. But yes, getting to that thing, right, also is that because we are feeble humans, we like to break things down into easily digestible choices, i.e., stay or go, i.e.,
binary over nuanced.
Yes, binary over nuanced. And there is nothing binary about what's going on, I would imagine, in the closed conference room doors of Biden's campaign. And we will never know what's going on in there. Such things are tightly held secrets. And quite frankly, every poll that we see, they ignore.
Yeah. Well, it's selective. Yeah. Selective reasoning.
every opinion that we see, they ignore,
Right.
right? Sure, they keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the press or whatever, but they're weighing that against 1,000 other data points, many of which are proprietary and will and are purposefully so.
Right.
Right.
But to avoid going too far down the political well, I think what's key to understand here, and I mean, I'd like to shift it in that direction, is the idea of simply the frenetic the pacing and the cadence involved in certain positions require an ability to either be more intense or less intense. Like there is this,
and to know when to be those things.
Yeah, and to know when and to be able to do it quickly and frankly
on the fly.
Right. And what's interesting about that is this is actually does, like, it's funny that you have to be a certain age to run. They have to, I think, is it 45? I think is the, but
no, it's 35.
Is it 35? Okay. All right. I thought it was 40 or something like that. Or I thought it was either way. So I think on that side of the coin, it's correct because you have enough experience. You're not necessarily, in theory, going to make snap decisions without, like, you have critical thinking skills. And again, we're all talking in theory here. We're not necessarily talking in reality. But though, as we get older, I mean, we've seen this before, the idea of, we start off where, I mean, to be crude, we start off in diapers, we could end up in diapers, right? You know what I mean? Like that's the circle of life. And as we get closer to the other side of things, to me, the ability to be productive and to be useful, valued, all that is inherent on being aware and understanding and acknowledging the limitations of where you're at. And that's,
no question.
And that's fine. Because we would never say, hey, 15-year-old kid, how about you take charge of this major company? They'd be like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. But yet an 85-year-old would be like, here you go ahead, right? Like that, or an 80-year-old. That's essentially what we're saying, is we're saying, are we going to put a teenager in charge or a very senior citizen, right? And
but also, and this gets back to cadence too, right? Everyone's cadence is different.
Yep.
Everyone's right. So my wife's Aunt Janet, who we see almost every day because she comes and swims over at our place, as for her exercise, she just turned 80, right? She's 2 years older than Trump and 1 year younger than Biden, right? Yep. And she's great. She swims every day. We have deep, interesting conversations. She is pretty much solo taking care of her husband who has MS, and helping him get around. He's not really able to walk without assistance. He's not able to eat without some help cleaning up. He has some fairly severe MS. They're the same age. And that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Here's Janet, who's still running around, working her ass off, cognitively there, doing her thing at 80, exercising daily, the whole 9 yards. She's just as capable as I am. And here's her husband. Now, granted, there's a medical condition there, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
Right?
I mean,
So that's also part of it, right? We can't just judge on age alone.
No.
I know 50-year-olds who act like they're 90, and I know 50-year-olds who act like they're 30, right? Like you.
I
right?
I also think, to your point, that it's not just the age and its circumstance, but it's also what, if you've been in a fairly rote situation for a long period of time, your ability to adapt is diminished as well, because you've got like a fairly rote routine thing that can affect your ability to shift gears and have cadence. So it's not just like how many, how how many ages have you, how many times have you, traveled around the sun kind of thing. It's more, there's a whole bunch of, again, the word nuance comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it is different for everyone, but I think for the purposes of the conversation here, and just in general, when it comes to productivity, is this speed, like the idea of going at a breakneck speed. The term breakneck is apt,
Right, right,
right?
right.
You got to slow
Well,
down.
exactly.
You got to slow down, and you have to your point, know when to. Like
Right,
it was your wife's aunt, right? That's what we're talking about here.
right,
Right,
right.
right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She probably has an understanding of this is about as much as I can do. Like she'll push it
Oh
to the
yeah.
point, but
Well,
wisdom,
yeah, but
yeah,
she,
but wisdom goes,
yeah,
yeah, that's it. Like that's just, this
yeah.
is
Well,
where I will go. My mother-in-law's the same. My mother-in-law travels a lot. She's in her late 70s. She travels, she does all
mhm,
these things. She has her own cabin. She takes care of things there. Like she's very active, and my mom, who is 2 years younger, she's not, my mom is fully capable of being active and all that stuff, but my mom at this
yeah.
point is retired, sits at home, watches baseball, lives like like a quote traditional retiree. If I was to ask
Mm-hmm.
her to ramp things up to the level of my mother-in-law, she wouldn't be able to do it. At least not right away.
Yeah.
She would have, number one, she'd have to be willing to do it. And at that age, that's the other
Mm-hmm.
thing. The one thing that does come along with age is, yeah, I'm not doing that now. Like I mean, and that's not a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing necessarily. Like I think I've talked about this
Mm-hmm.
before. Like I went skiing with my kids again, like a few years ago, and tried it again because they wanted to do it. And as I was failing again and again and again and again, um, I took the last the lift back up the hill on the baby hill or bunny hill or whatever. I'm like, nope, I don't like doing this. I don't need to learn how to ski. I'm not going to do it. And I was very steadfast,
Yeah.
and that made me feel good. So that's number
Mm-hmm.
one. When you get to that, like you're going to be so like, I'm not going to do this. And some of it is like sound, and some of it is just, you being like, there's arrogance which I think can
Yeah.
happen in certain areas, especially when power dynamics are involved.
Sure.
But
Sure.
it doesn't mean my mom isn't capable of doing it. She's younger,
No.
she's healthy, but circumstances are pretty much aligned. Like there's no reason, and she's
Mm-hmm.
younger. She's just choosing not to. And again, this comes down
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
choice. And
Yeah.
I think that really when people say I don't have time, I can't slow down, I can't do this. Yes, you just are making choices. And we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
this before too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And the I guess getting back to the whole kind of work versus wisdom value, right?
Mhm.
That's a culture problem. That's not necessarily
Right.
anything that we ourselves can solve by ourselves, right? We unfortunately, and I'm saying unfortunately, yes, live in a culture that is not true of, I would say, 2/3 of the planet, where our value is based upon our production.
Yeah. Yep.
And that the one thing that we as individuals can do to affect that is to really start to and embody that within ourselves, valuing our own wisdom over our own production, value over our work, right? Valuing ourself for what we know and what we have learned and the lessons that we have gained along the journey over the the production that we've put into it over the money in our bank accounts that prove that somehow that because I have this, I is obviously a reward for how good I was at that,
Right.
despite the fact that you get it no matter what you do at work is, I mean,
Mhm.
like until you're fired, they have to, pay you a certain amount, right?
Sure.
It's what you agree to. But, you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? That we ourselves internally to ourselves have to value our age for things other than what we're able to produce.
It's you know, it's fascinating because going back to the like, being 50 and not feeling 50 and not yet we put so much value in that number. Like, but yet
Yeah.
everyone will say, look, I don't feel 50. I don't feel like not everybody, but I'm being general here. But I mean, most people when they get older, like, oh, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm this, I'm that. But the number, if you were to look at it from a quantitative data, you're 65, well, you're old. Yeah,
Mhm.
relative to who also, you know, I mean, again, we've seen those memes where it's like Wilford Brimley was 49 when he started filming Cocoon in 1984. And I'm like, he looks like he's 63, 60. He looks like he's 70, right? The Golden Girls,
Yeah.
you're the age of a Golden Girl now, Patrick. Like you are literally like,
I'm aware of that.
and
I am aware of that.
and that's the thing is it's like Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton when they were in All in the Family. I'm older than them. I'm older than they were.
And with the Golden Girls, the one who played the oldest one was actually the youngest.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing is that if to your point, to further your point about we face on your contribution in terms of what you can make, it's not about what, it's about how much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think about like, well, and I think, you know, because here's the thing, right? I have really come, I think, especially this year, it has dawned on me how much pride brings me happiness, right? And how, for instance, the fence that I have repaired and rebuilt and whatnot, right? It's my fence at my house. I walk past it all the time, and every time I look over at that fence, I say, "Wow, I'm pretty proud of that." I'm pretty proud of that because I made something better than it was before. It's not just that I fixed it. It's also that I built it stronger than it was before. I have hopefully prevented whatever the problems that required it to be fixed from happening in the future, or at least the ability for them to be repaired much more easily and much more quickly when they do. Like all of those things went into the choices and decisions I made when I rebuilt that fence, right? I was not thinking about just getting it done. I was thinking about how can I do this in a way that makes it better and that makes it easier for the next person, or for even me the next time I'm faced with having to do this, assuming that I live another 20, 30 years to see, the similar problems happen, right? Because it really was just a time thing. The posts rotted out. It's as simple as that, and that's going to happen. And it's going to happen somewhere between 30, or somewhere between 10 and 30 years. The posts are going to rot out.
You promised we weren't going to talk about renovations and repairs, Patrick. I'm dealing with
Oh my God. Just kidding. Sorry, my bad. But my point being is that I took my time. What I did took longer, was harder, in the grand scheme of things, costs more, but I offset that by doing other things that made sense. Not the least of which was doing it myself and not hiring someone to do it. All of that is to say that I walk past it every day, and every day I'm reminded, hey, I'm 56 years old, but gosh, I did that. And I'm pretty happy with how that turned out.
Speaking of being happy about things and how they turned out, you've got a book. And I wanted to share that and then where people can keep up with you before we wrap up this episode. And
well, Yeah. So I've got several books, but the most recent one is For You, which is the book I wrote for my 16-year-old daughter, who I'm hoping can take away some lessons in there that I have learned, and maybe this is the beginning of my elderhood in her eyes, in her world, right? That she will not only know me as her father, but also as a wizened old person who can give her advice about life and such. Of course, being 16, I don't know that she's quite there yet, but hey, maybe when she looks back on this one, she'll be there. And everything else is at patrickrhone.com, or I should say the directions to everything else is at patrickrhone.com, because my blog is at patrickrhone.net, and my books are, on Amazon, Lulu, here and there, and but you just go to patrickrhone.com and it tells you all the places you can find all the stuff, which,
At your own pace,
I
of
hope
course.
at your own pace, right?
Patrick, thanks for having a productive conversation with me today. I'll see you next time on our next PM Talks episode.
For sure, my friend. Thank you.
And that's how we wrapped things up. Another great conversation with my friend Patrick Rhone. We've got another one coming next month. But until then, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. That way you don't miss a single episode of any of these PM Talks monthly series episodes that we have coming your way. You can get all of the show notes for this episode wherever you get your podcasts, or go to mikevardy.com/podcast553. But if you're subscribed to the podcast, you can just check out the show notes on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or even YouTube. And subscribing to the show is one way to support the show, and another way to make sure that you don't miss a single episode of what's to come, which includes our regular Flashback Friday episodes, which we're bringing you another one next episode, as well as, again, this monthly series with Patrick Rhone and fresh, shiny new episodes every week. So subscribe to the show to support it, and check out the sponsors that you heard mentioned during our conversation today at mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors. Click on those that resonated with you, and that way they know we sent you there. And of course, it helps keep the lights on and the conversation flowing as well. That's it for this episode of A Productive Conversation. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.